Steel Curtain Network.
Por Jorgito! Going down! Najee Harris! DJ Watt!
What is up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome back to another Steelers postgame show. Still in the preseason. Week 2 just wraps up. The Steelers lose again, this time to the Buffalo Bills in a whopping score. Riveting game, 9-3. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis. Dave, welcome to the postgame show. How's it going?
It's going. It's just not much to really take in there. So can't really get excited about a whole lot. We'll find some stuff, a few things to get excited about, but it's I don't know when the total run scored in the Pirates game earlier today almost beats that of the game scored at the football game or the point scored there. It's a little bit
Yes.
frustrating.
Absolutely. Bryan Davis, welcome to the show.
I tell you what, I feel listless. It's like in 2002 when you driving past the Kmart and look in the back of the store and see your wife naked with a janitor from work in the back of a Ford Mustang. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel right now.
I've always felt that this preseason, it's educational. You learn stuff. Sometimes what you learn is positive. Sometimes what you learn is negative. We learned a lot in this game about a lot of different things. And unfortunately, there was not a lot that was positive. But we're going to start this like we always do in every post-game show with our knee-jerk reaction. So, Dave, I'm going to throw it to you first. What was your knee-jerk reaction after this 9-3 loss?
I thought the defense in the first half was great. I thought the run defense in the second half was not good, but still dug in and didn't let them get into the touchdown zone.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little bit there, but the offense just couldn't finish. Man, long drives in the second half, couldn't finish. And really in the first half, just never really completely got going.
Yeah, I agree with that. Bryan, what's your knee-jerk reaction?
Knee-jerk reaction is that this is going to be a very pessimistic week, and there's not going to be a lot of fanfare going into week 1. Doesn't mean that you should just quit on the season right now. I'm just saying that you said there's some positives, and I know there are some, but I'm looking at a lot of negatives right now, and I'm not really a negative person.
Yeah, I mean, the knee-jerk reaction is there's a lot of bad. There's a lot of bad. But I do think that Dave mentioned there are some positives to glean from that starting defense. I think that group is going to be really, really good. The question is the offense going to be able to do anything to help? And that's unfortunately what we've experienced the last few seasons in Pittsburgh, regardless of Matt Cannon or Randy Fichtner calling the plays doesn't matter. So let's start on offense and let's talk about this like we always do in case you're new to the program. We break things down from a statistical perspective, but we also give our own thoughts. Let's start with the quarterback play, and I would bring up this super chat here because, well, it's appropriate. Nebby58 gives us $4.99. Thank you for the tip. We appreciate it. Said, if you think about it, we averaged 1.5 points per quarterback. Yes, that is accurate, and neither quarterback really did a lot. But let's start with Russell Wilson. We hadn't seen Russell Wilson yet in a Steelers uniform. We get to see him. Dave, what was your thoughts of? Let me read the stat line before we get there, just so we all have this out of the way. His stat line was, well, it wasn't glowing. We'll put it that way. Oh my gosh, my box score just went away. Do you have it in front of you, Dave?
Yes, I do.
Couldn't read that off.
Well, I had to change it because I was looking at just the first quarter. So here we got it. Russell Wilson, is this it for the whole game? Okay. 8 of 10, 47 yards. 12-yard long, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 sacks.
Yeah.
86.2 percentage. Yeah, I think that's it. The Fields numbers aren't complete, so
let's not worry about his. Don't worry about his.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about Russ first. What do you think about Russ?
Okay, there it is. He didn't do anything overly impressive, obviously, but At the same time, it's kind of hard to judge a quarterback when I'm trying to focus on the offensive line and they are not getting the job done.
No.
So, but regardless, it seems like we've kind of had this. That's been a trend in Pittsburgh for several years early on. As how do you really assess the quarterback when the offensive line isn't doing much? So, I mean, lot of dump offs. Did he? What was his longest pass play? What I'm trying to think of.
Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Did I say what it was?
No.
A long of 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was probably Van Jefferson.
Probably. So, I mean, there was nothing that really stood out overall for me.
All right. Brian, what was your take on Russell Wilson?
I don't know what my take on Russell Wilson was because he was on an island, but the problem with being on an island when you can't make a phone out of a coconut means that everything was bad. And that's really Russell did nothing to really impress. I don't know how much of a chance he had to impress, not just the offensive line, the receivers. We'll talk about receivers later, but they were not getting separation. They're got to keep them separated, and they weren't there. So there were no throws downfield to even be had.
Yeah, and I feel for Russell Wilson. He's in a really tough spot because he suffers the calf injury. He's missing time in camp. Justin Fields is out there, and he's the talk of the town. He's making the plays. He plays in the first preseason game. Doesn't really light it up, but he plays okay. And then finally, Russell Wilson gets his first shot at showing fans what he can do. And, well, it didn't look good. And we'll talk about the offensive line shortly. And that's going to have a lot to do with how we dictate how Russell Wilson performed. But I thought when he did have time, it was just a bunch of checkdowns. And I think that's what a lot of fans are seeing. They're like, oh my gosh, we've seen this for how many years now? Like, can we get someone that can push the ball down the field and throw the ball in the middle? And there's a lot of people that are saying, told you so. Like, this is who Russell Wilson is now. I'm not going to jump to that judgment just yet. But at the same time, I was hoping for more. We'll put it that way. But I think we can say that with a lot of positions. But let's now switch it. And we'll talk about the quarterbacks together here in a second. But let's switch and go to Justin Fields, who inserts himself into the game. I think it was the 2-minute warning in the first half. He gets that 2-minute drive and gets that opportunity. And then he has the whole second half. Now his stat line is a little bit better based on the fact that he had more rushing yards. I think they both had 5 drives. I know Russell Wilson and Justin Fields had 5 drives and he had more rushing yards. I think he had 40 some rushing yards. Dave, what do you think about Justin Fields and how he came in against the backups?
I tell you what, he's definitely exciting. I mean, my goodness, that play where it's like, he stepped out. Oh, I swore. I don't know if it's because the angle for the TV angle, because when they showed it from the sideline, I could see that there was no one else close. I'm like, oh, he overthrew the guy. That's not who he was throwing it to. He's throwing it to Fitzpatrick on the sideline, who made a nice catch. So he does some dynamic things, but at the same time, it's not like there's also some flaws in there. Mm-hmm. Do you guys put that overthrow in the end zone on him? I thought it was, but I also saw some comments from beat reporters on X that maybe the receiver slowed down a little bit when he shouldn't have. I don't know, but I mean, at least Justin Fields was dynamic and was trying to have some escapability. But easily the Steelers' leading rusher, and was doing all he could to make plays. Yeah.
Brian, what was your take on Justin Fields? Which, Brian, before you go into that, I want to mention I finally found a box score. Justin Fields finishes 11 of 17 for 92 passing yards, a 5.4 average, no touchdowns, no interceptions, a 78.6 rating. But he also leads the team in rushing, 8 carries for 42 yards with a long of 20, averaging 5.3 yards per carry. With that out of the way, Brian, go ahead, talk about Justin Fields.
Yeah, I absolutely love how dynamic he can be. I love the fact that he can get out of trouble. Dave, thanks for bringing that up. That was a gorgeous highlight play. The cornerback did get his hand on that ball a little bit, to which Fitzpatrick did still make an amazing toe tap to go ahead and be in bounds, but it was just great. Anything completing that's a play that we've seen in the last couple of years that just goes down as a sack. So if we're looking at something like that, then you're going to have a lot of people calling for Justin Fields. However, he could not get them in the end zone against second, third, maybe fourth string team stringers. I screwed that all up, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Yeah.
I believe it or not, I know what you meant.
Yeah. I mean, Justin Fields, and Dave, you said it well. I mean, when you have an offensive line that is not holding up, an offensive line, even if it's backups, some of the second stringers are getting inserted into the lineup, and you're feeling the pressure. Justin Fields is a guy you would want in there because he can escape the pressure. He can utilize his mobility, and you saw on some of the biggest throws that he made were designed bootlegs where he got outside the pocket and he had the option to run or throw, cut the field in half, all that good stuff. So Justin Fields, I want to talk about these quarterbacks here in a second, but we do have some super chats that I want to get to. Let's go to Brandon Diaz, gives us $1.99. Said Fields gives us the best chance to win. That's debatable. He also had some turnover-worthy plays in this
based
game.
on tonight, I could see why you would make that assessment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but there's a lot of highs and lows. Yeah,
right. Your buddy Wes, everyone's buddy Wes. He's given us $5. Says Dave, thank you. Son's first game. Now he is hooked. Amazing night. Fields played great. Great weather. Glad you got to go to the game. So he had your seats.
I'm telling you, preseason games are a great time to take if you're going to take your kid to a first game. Yeah. They really are. It's not as crowded. People aren't as overall rowdy in a way that you would maybe be uncomfortable with your kids around. It's a better atmosphere, and it can still be. Preseason games are still fun in the stadium. It's a whole different experience when you're there. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
That's okay.
So I'm glad you had a good time, Wes. Thanks for the pictures.
Let's go. Dennis Pavlak gives us $10. He said, I'm going to use reverse psychology. Last preseason, the offense could not be stopped. This season, we can't score. To me, I look at a better offense in the regular season. Hey, I'm all for the positive thinking. Love it, Dennis. Thank you very much for the tips. Everyone, appreciate it. Now, I want to ask you all a question, and this is jumping the gun, and we'll talk about this on the preview, but I want to ask it now. The way that things played out in this game and only one preseason game left next Sunday at 1:00 in Detroit, how would you handle the division of labor at quarterback if you were Mike Tomlin? Dave, what would you do?
Ooh, okay. What would I do? Part of me wants to see some Russ some more because you didn't see him in the first one. But I don't know if they'll do that. I mean, I'd like to at least see him for a couple drives and see Fields for a couple drives, not as much, and then just turn it over to Kyle Allen for at least the entire second half.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's fair. What about you, Brian? What do you think?
I want to see Russ the entire first half because, as Dave just said, we've gotten to see a good bit of Justin Fields. We cannot go back to remember us complaining about when Ben Roethlisberger only got a couple of series the entire preseason, and Ben Roethlisberger was a Hall of Famer. So I think Russell Wilson needs a whole lot more. Now, some people will say, well, Russ could be a Hall of Famer, but right now it's not the same as what Ben Roethlisberger was. He was an elite player. So when we're looking at this right now, I think the guy with that calf injury, like you brought up, Jeff, I think he needs a whole lot more time. I don't think we need to see much of Kyle Allen whatsoever. So I would actually put Justin Fields in the third quarter. I don't know how they're going to divide this up, but I'd like to see Fields still has something to prove.
Yeah.
They just didn't play like last year. They had 20 some guys not even dress for the third game. It's just they treated it a lot like the old fourth preseason game is the way that they do it. So I just don't expect them to go away from that.
It's a different situation though.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if Mike Tomlin views this as, the offense is fine, then he's seeing something in practice every day that we're not. That's in stadium. And he always says in stadium means more than practice settings. So we'll see if that rings true. But it's going to be really interesting. Before we move on to the running backs, I do want to mention that but Coach Mike Tomlin gave a quick injury update after the game today. Jaylen Warren's being evaluated with a hamstring injury. So is Anthony Averett, and Peyton Wilson is being evaluated for a concussion. Now, I'm pretty sure I heard that correctly. When I heard Tomlin talking, that means that there was no diagnosed concussion yet from Peyton Wilson, but he's being evaluated for a concussion. So that's going to be something to keep your eye on, especially with the Jaylen Warren thing. You think about it, he's probably not going to play preseason week 3, gets a week off after that. You would hope he should be good to go for week 1. But let's talk about the running backs. I already mentioned how Justin Fields was the one who led the Steelers in rushing with 42 yards. LaMichael Pirine, actually, I thought he had a great game. He had 6 carries for 20 yards. Aaron Shamklin, gosh, I feel bad for Bob.
Yeah, there's a K in there.
Yeah, there is a K in there.
You did all right with that.
Shamklin, yeah, okay, 4 for 15. Najee Harris, 4 for 17. Dejan Edwards, 2 for 6. Guys, what did you think about the running backs? Let's start with the running backs. We'll get to the offensive line here soon enough. Dave, what do you think?
What do you call? Did you say Cordero Patterson? Because I call him a running back.
Sure, go ahead. I missed.
Yeah, he was one for minus one.
-1.
Not disappointing. And then Jaylen Warren getting hurt after a 1-yard carry. I wasn't paying attention to the Bills personnel to know exactly when they took out people on defense. I really have no idea. I like getting more of a Steelers perspective on the television broadcast, with it being Bob Pampiani and Charlie Batch. But sometimes it's actually a little bit helpful if you can trust your eyes on the Steelers and then listen to what the people are saying to tell you when people are in and out of the game for their opponent in the preseason. It can be helpful because early on, I don't think they were doing much against the run. If you look at it, breaking it down, I don't think they really started going until the second quarter. I mean, in the first quarter, yeah, they had 14 yards on 4 carries in the first quarter and 36 yards on 7 carries in the second quarter is when it really, but also that looks better on paper, but 20 of them was 1 yard of Justin Fields scrambling right before the end of the half. So once again, it's really hard to assess the running backs. I thought Najee Harris was running hard. He was getting hit at the line of scrimmage and then was still gaining some yards on some of those plays. It's just hard to assess them when I still feel that the biggest problem was the offensive line.
Yeah. Brian, what was your take on the running backs?
Where I thought the run blocking was very good last week, I didn't think it was this week at all. I saw Zach Frazier get exposed early on in that game with a tackle behind for a loss. I can't remember who the running back was, but I want to follow up with Dave. Sorry, I keep waxing your car tonight, Dave, but I like the fact that you said that, the fact that Najee was running tough, because you can't really single out Najee for having a bad game. He still averaged over 4 yards a carry, and he was running hard, and he was making applesauce out of rotten apples.
Yeah, and okay, so let's talk about the offensive line next, based on the fact that I think you have to. Whether you're talking about the quarterback play, the pass catchers, which we'll still have to get to, there's no holes being opening up for the offensive the running backs. Let's talk about the O-line. Dave, I'll let you go first because this is your bread and butter, the offensive line play. We all saw Broderick Jones struggle. That was blatant.
Yes.
Like anyone with eyes in their skull saw Broderick Jones get absolutely abused on more than one occasion. But what else did you see from the offensive line?
Well, I was doing my best to see the offensive line, but I also had to cover the knee-jerk reaction article tonight, so I couldn't break it down as much as I could. So what really stood out was when things were not good. And the biggest thing standing out was Broderick Jones. Now, I know a lot of people are going to talk about, it's because they're moving him back and forth. I don't know. You can't say for sure that's the problem, but you can't say for sure that it's not. But it's not like, he's better at left tackle. He was pretty bad at left tackle last week. So it kind of goes both ways. And you could say, well, is it getting him in his head or whatever, having to change sides? Maybe it is. But bottom line is that is not the Broderick Jones we were seeing the second half of last year. He is really struggling. I think the problem when he was in college was he would rely on his athleticism rather than his technique in order to win matchups. This is the NFL. You need athleticism and technique in order to win your matchups. I mean, my goodness, that one time Russ was just trying to have a swing pass to Jaylen Warren, and he couldn't even get it out there because Broderick Jones got pushed back into him so fast. It was pretty bad. So I know there's the elbow thing with him. So I don't want to just go on and on about Broderick Jones, but he's the one who really stood out. And I still think it's funny. People talk about how bad Dan Moore Jr. is. He wasn't bad tonight. He wasn't as much, but but the unit as a whole was not getting the job done. So you could sit and talk about individuals all you want. The unit as a whole has to work together and get the job done. I didn't think Zach Frazier did a bad job. Nothing about him stood out in a bad way, but there wasn't also things that were standing out in a great way when it came to it. So I'm really looking forward to trying to. I don't really want to have to watch this game again, but I really want to break down the offensive line by watching it again, just because I didn't get. It's one of those things I didn't get to really see on first watch. Kind of like on the first fourth down play with Justin Fields. It looked like he should have handed the ball off and they would have possibly had the first down. But I didn't actually get to break down and see, did he make the right decision based on the player he was supposed to be reading as to whether or not they were optioning that he was supposed to hand it to him or not. So I'm sorry I can't go too much into detail about individual players other than what stood out really bad. But just as a unit, there were just too many breakdowns constantly.
Well, I think also, and I should bring this up now, I should have brought it up earlier, is that report from Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette before the game that Nate Herbig has a significant shoulder injury that could have him out for a long period of time, in which case Zach Frazier is the guy then. And now you're looking at James Daniels as probably the emergency backup at center if something happens to Frazier. So if you talk about offensive line and injuries, and Fadu Tanu's not going to be ready until probably the regular season, it's kind of in shambles right now. Brian, what was your take?
Yeah, so I want to get back to Broderick Jones real quick. And I have a hard time blaming this all on he being at right tackle when he shouldn't be, because nobody was complaining November 2nd and on of last year with the way Broderick Jones was playing right tackle.
Yeah.
Nobody had a problem with it. Now, all of a sudden, he doesn't belong there. He shouldn't be there. He's a left tackle. And I'm seeing that, and we're saying that. And I'm not trying to insult anybody, but I think that's a bunch of malarkey. Now, you brought up his elbow. We could clearly see the brace. If that's a problem, then why is he out there if he can't play? Because he's
an elbow brace should make you have bad footwork.
Okay. Yeah. Well, footwork works one thing, but I also noticed his hands were also a problem too. It was, I watched Major League for the first time in a long time. One of our favorite movies. We talk about that all the time. And I felt like it was Roger Dorn out there with none of this Olay stuff, because I felt like it was Olay out there just letting him go through. I don't know if he's supposed to be out there right now. I don't know if he's fit to be out there, but I'm not ready to just say that he's garbage because of what we saw from him last year. So I think there needs to be continuity. I realize that this is just preseason. There are a lot of red flags. One thing, the second sack of the game, I thought it was James Daniels that gave it up. And I didn't think James Daniels looked good in this game either. So I thought the entire right side of the line looked worse than the left side of the line. Yes, with Dan Moore Jr. alongside Isaac on that side of the line. I mentioned before that I saw a little bit of struggle out of Zach Frazier. It was one running play that I saw. The Herbig thing we talked about on the preview the other night, because it was said that he was there were reports from Alan Saunders on a show that I listened to here on the Fans First Sports Network that he was hurt to begin with. And so that came out more and more Saturday with that report, but this has been out there for the last couple of days. So it has already been preconceived that you're going to see Zach Frazier as the starter. I'm wondering if Ryan McCollum gets an extra look here now too, as well as being that last guy on the 53.
It's going to be interesting, and Dave and I will have our updated predictions early this week to talk about what we think after 2 preseason games, who could make the team, who isn't. Not that I'm going to be right anyways, because I've been way wrong, way more than I've been right in that regard. But I will say with the offensive line, listening to both of you guys say about Broderick Jones that, hey, you weren't complaining last year, tells me that this could have just been a bad evening. Like, this could have just been one bad game.
But it's 2 of them. He had a bad game last week.
I understand that, but I'm
It was a
trying
pattern.
I'm aware of that, but I'm trying to also put myself in a perspective that it is the preseason, and that think back to last year, and let's not overreact to some of the stuff that happens. Broderick Jones maybe is banged up. Maybe he doesn't play in week 3 of the preseason to get himself healthy for the regular season. I don't know. If I knew that stuff, I wouldn't be on this show right now. I'd be in the locker room talking with teammates, or players. But still, it's one of those things for me where, yeah, there's a lot of gelling that needs to happen. If Zach Frazier's the guy and Nate Herbig's out, that's fine. I think that's the best case scenario for Zach Frazier, because he's going to get all the first team reps. They've got to get that figured out, because nothing will work on this offense without the offensive line doing their job. So I think that's really, really important. So let's finish the offense up with the pass catchers. There's not much to talk about here because, again, there wasn't a lot of passing. Des Fitzpatrick leads the team with 32 yards receiving on 2 catches. Connor Hayward had 20 yards with 2 catches. Van Jefferson, 19 for 3 catches. Scotty Miller, 18 with 3 catches. Jalen Warren, 14 yards for 2 catches. Pat Freiermuth had 1 catch for 10, and then a bunch of others for 1 catch for 5, 5, 4, etc. Dave, what was your thoughts on the pass catchers?
I thought they did fine. The only one that I thought was close to a receiver that wasn't caught. Wait, there might have been more than one, but I know the 4th down play to Connor Hayward, but he had a guy all over him. So I don't even know if that ball got to his hands or to someone else, or someone else hit it away, because they never really showed it again. I feel like they were doing fine, and they're based on when balls were coming their way. I mentioned before the one in the end zone that they said maybe the receiver slowed down when he shouldn't have, when he was wide open, and Fields made a nice throw down there that looked high then. So overall, I don't know that there's anything I can complain about. I mean, George Pickens didn't get a target until the second quarter. I think he was only he was targeted twice, where he caught the one for 4 yards, and then the other one was the one on the sidelines that he made a fantastic catch, and toe tap. But unfortunately, he toe tapped before the ball got there because the ball was so far out of bounds, and then he caught it. So, it's not like I felt like it was the receiver was any part of the problem of the offense being able to move the ball tonight, unless they just weren't getting open. But then also you have to ask: is that the receiver? Or is that the scheme? It's tough. It's kind of tough to figure that out right now.
All right, Brian, what's your take on the pass catchers?
I really felt that they weren't getting any separation. When, I'm not seeing a lot of drops, so that's a nice thing. But they're not getting opportunities because they're not making their own opportunities, and we've seen that before. And the thing is, we saw that a lot in 2023, and it was deemed to be the problem of Pickett not being able, not really having the release and the eyes to find them. Now, where you have more accomplished quarterbacks, especially with a guy like Russell Wilson, and I'm wondering if some of those situations where he was sacked, would have there been maybe one less sack if one of those guys were open? So I hate to bring up the name, but there's a guy in San Francisco and a general manager in San Francisco that's probably salivating right now. The general manager is saying that, hey, I might be able to take them for a little bit more right now, because Pickens can't get open alone. Van Jefferson wasn't bad, but they didn't get the separation to make things happen. Just like we complain about when we stick up for running backs and say they have no holes to go through. You got to sometimes stick up for a quarterback too, to say, well, he can't throw to them if they're not open.
Yeah, and that's tough for me to see just watching the television angles and stuff. But I mean, I know that there was someone that said that on the pass to George Pickens along the left sideline, which was ruled out of bounds, challenged and upheld, that Calvin Austin was wide open on a seam route that the quarterback just didn't see him, just didn't look that way. And
I couldn't see
didn't
that on
see it.
TV.
I
There's
barely
so
got
many
to see
times
a
when they drop back to
replay.
patch, you just can't see what
Yeah.
the receivers are doing a lot.
I barely got to see a replay of the George Pickens would-be catch. I was watching commercials because they go to commercial every 5 seconds. So it was tough for me to see much in that regard. But I didn't complain about the pass catchers. I didn't think the pass catchers were screwing this offense up. I think there was a lot of other factors there in that regard. So I want to get a couple super chats up here before we go to our break and then talk about the defense. Let's go to J-Rock. Gives us $10. Thank you very much. Said, is it time to say that I want to see Justin Fields to George Pickens' next preseason game? The offense was awful. O-line struggled. Yikes. I don't think anyone would argue that Justin Fields brings a level of excitement that Russell Wilson just didn't in this game. But we'll see. We'll see what Russell Wilson has to do the next time he's out there. J-Rock gives us $1. I don't see a post there, but thank you very much. We appreciate it. Let's go to Dennis Pavlak. He gives us $5. So the problem is, I think he believes he's a left tackle. He's talking about Broderick Jones. He doesn't look interested. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the issue is there. I'm not going to speculate.
There's something going on there.
Certainly looks like it. Certainly looks like it. Let's go to Claude Bishop. Gave us $10. He said, thanks for creating the best Steelers football network on the net, and all of the co-hosts are great, including Big G and the two other non-Steelers fans. I think he's referring to the homies, in which case would be Brandon Harriet or B-Dirt and Pay, our buddy from he covers the Ravens for the show, but he's a Bears fan. He said, we really appreciate all of you guys, and we appreciate you, Claude, for the tip. Thank you very much, $10. We do appreciate all the support. All right, we're going to take a break. If you're watching live on YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. For those listening on the audio side, we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. All right, we're back. We're talking defense because when you lose a game 9-3, the offense is going to take up most of your time, scoring only 3 points. But the defense actually does their job, and they hold the opponent to 9 points. So let's talk about the Steelers defense. They did not play their starters or their high-profile players nearly as much as the offense did, rightfully so. TJ Watt was scheduled to play but did not play. They just felt like he didn't need the work or didn't want to risk him getting injured, which I am 100% fine with. Nonetheless, Dave, we're going to start off with the pass rush. I'm talking about how the Steelers put pressure on, well, guys like Mitch Trubisky. So Mitch Trubisky, he finished the game 9 of 13 for 86 yards, a 5.5 average, no touchdowns, did throw a pick for 55.3 yards. In terms of sacking the quarterback, the Steelers defense, they registered, let's see here, sacks. How many sacks? 3 sacks with Nick Herbig with 1.5. Keanu Benton gets half. I thought they had another one. I must have missed one.
Yeah, the German guy.
That's right. The very end, the German guy.
I'm not even going to try to say it.
Welshaw.
Well, she definitely can't spell it. I tell you that.
Julius Dubs.
There you go, Dave. What do you think about the pass rush?
Yeah, that for some reason that's not showing up on their stat sheet on the Steelers stuff, is it? But it should have been.
Box scores all over the internet are off and awful.
Yeah, it's it's called the preseason. It's so hard. It's so hard to get good stats and good breakdown of the preseason. It even says here in the play-by-play that DiNucci was sacked for -7 yards by Jay Welshoff. So obviously
ESPN finally updated. They've got it accurate. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because the pass rush, there were a couple plays in there. I'm like, oh wow, he's got a while to, and it was Trubisky. Maybe 2 plays in there. I'm like, wow, he's got a lot of time. Most of the time he didn't. I felt like the pass rush was adequate, but the problem is you barely saw it in the second half because how many passing plays did they actually have in the first half? In the second half? Not very many. because all they were doing was running the ball and running the ball and running the ball. So I was even trying to find what the second half passing plays was, but I can't get it right now. So in all, I thought, Herbig did a nice job when he was in there, and I never really noticed, because I was trying to focus a little bit more on the interior stuff. I was mainly looking at the defensive line and inside linebackers. Moon and Johnson, who had been flashing and camping with everything, I didn't really notice them tonight. Did you guys?
I noticed Kyron Johnson.
Okay.
He's got a real quick first step. And when he was, I keep on thinking, why is Marquise Pouncey rushing the passer?
Yeah.
He's number 53.
That's right,
It looks really weird to me. But nonetheless, like I saw him. I noticed him because Alex Highsmith didn't play in this game either. So the Steelers didn't even have their top 2 edge rushers. I think that's important to note. But all right, Brian, what about you?
So if it's September through January and I find out that one of the best quarterbacks in the game is on the sideline wearing a baseball cap and a hoodie, I'm excited. I was actually bummed out when I found out that Josh Allen was not going to be playing in this game, because I wanted to see the Steelers defense against one of the best in the league. And we didn't get to see that. But we got to see some flashes of very good play, especially from a guy like Herbig. We saw flashes of great play, not just flashes. We saw consistent great play from not just Herbig, but of course Peyton Wilson. And you never celebrate the fact that, oh, I'm glad it's just a concussion, because you don't want anybody to have a head injury. With everything we know about CTE and anything like that, it might not be a concussion. He's being evaluated. I understand that. Happy it's not a lower leg injury, because I actually thought that's what it was right away, because it actually looked like he was grabbing his legs when he was sitting there. But Peyton Wilson's going to be special. But right now we're celebrating 2 guys that probably will not be starting in September, because right now Herbig's your 3rd guy on the depth chart as far as that goes. Well, 2nd guy behind Watt. But unless there's an injury, you probably don't see Herbig starting. You're going to see him play plenty in games, being the 3rd guy, the first guy in, actually. So as far as that goes, Wilson, probably the same thing. Well, those guys have really carved out a spot on this team. I liked a lot of other things too. I have not seen Joey Porter Jr. get tested that much. So we haven't seen a lot of JPJ, because not a lot's going his way. We saw Deshaun Elliott get decimated on one play, and then the next 2 or 3 plays after that, he was coming up big. So good recovery from Deshaun there. I'm not noticing anything about Dante Jackson. I mean, is he playing? I don't know.
He didn't play in this game.
Okay. That's why I didn't notice anything from him. I don't know if did he play last week?
That's the battle in these preseason games, trying to figure out who's actually out there on the field.
Yeah.
Because unless you're looking it up, it's really hard to tell. But I thought the defense was good. I thought they were the bright spot of this game. They didn't give up any touchdowns. That's great. They bent a little bit. They didn't break. 9 points, no problem. However, I still give it an incomplete, because it was against Mitch Trubisky at the beginning and not against Josh Allen. So right now I'm going to curb my enthusiasm. I'm still saying the highlight of this game, besides the guy we're going to talk about and rave about when we talk about special teams, the defense was the highlight of it.
I'm sorry. I guess someone said Dante Jackson did play in the first defensive drive, so maybe he did play, but it was sparingly.
Maybe he did, like last week where he played 3 snaps. I don't know.
So it could be. Going back to the pass rush, I thought they did a great job. I loved what I saw from DeMarvin Leal. He was in the backfield. He wasn't necessarily getting home, but he was impacting plays. He was flushing the quarterback out of the pocket. Say what you want about Mitch Trubisky. It's Mitch Trubisky, whatever. He's doing his job. I thought Larry Ogunjobi from a pass rusher looked good. Montravius Adams continues to have a really good camp / preseason. what I really thought was awesome was on Nick Herbig's sack. They ran that inside twist where he comes right up the gut. It was unique. It was different. The Steelers don't typically do that a lot when you have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith out there. So Nick Herbig flashing that ability to blitz the quarterback from the middle, meaning he twists in from the outside pass rusher perspective there. I like that. I love to see what they were doing. And I thought that Kyron Johnson actually did show something. I thought he has some of those traits that you want to see as a potential fourth outside linebacker. So when I'm thinking about me and my 53-man roster prediction, maybe I have to make an adjustment for this one at the outside linebacker position, but we'll see. Let's go to the front. Let's go to the defensive front. I mentioned some of the players there, and DeMarvin Leal and Larry Ogunjobi. I don't think Cam Hayward played in this game at all. Did he? Did I miss? I didn't miss anything there.
I don't think he did either, because it was
Okay.
Loudermilk was out there to start. I know that.
True.
So
what did we think of?
Played? I know Keanu Benton played, so it had to be Cam that wasn't out there.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, what do we think about the front seven? I feel like this could be skewed. Dave would have the first half versus second half stats, and Buffalo's rushing game went off in the second half. They ended up rushing for 167 yards, 4.9 per carry, no touchdowns, along with 19. Ray Davis led them with 8 for 58 yards. Dave, what did you think about the run defense in that front seven?
Well, Buffalo had 125 rushing yards in the second half. In the first half, they only had 42. So to me, I mean, my goodness, the Bills had, no joke, they had 130 total yards in the second half, and 125 of them were rushing. Okay. Yeah. So that's because their net passing yards were 5. They just decided they were going to come out and run the ball, and they did. So that was a bit disappointing. But then again, it wasn't really against the main people when it came to the Steelers. I thought Larry Ogunjobi was noticeably good out there. I noticed Dean Lowry on a couple plays, but not a lot of them. And Keanu Benton, but some of these are also on the pass rush as well. But the overall run defense, I felt that they did a real nice job in the first half. And then the Bills came out in the second half like they were going to do it. I mean, they're averaging 3.82 yards per rush in the first half, because it was 42 yards on 11 rushing attempts. Not like, they shut them down, but pretty good. It was the second half they just gave up a ton. So it makes it difficult, because you are looking at a number of players that are they going to make the 53-man roster? If they are, it's going to be as the last guys on, especially those guys that are trying to stop the run. And my goodness, the Steelers had to be really thin at inside linebacker when both Peyton Wilson and Tyler Matakevich went down.
Yeah, that's a good point. Brian, what was your take on the front seven and the run defense?
I was perfectly fine with the front seven the entire game, just for the fact that, 125 yards, they were running it up, but those were 3s and 4s. However, they still did not let them get into the end zone. You have a fantastic running back in James Cook. He is what he did last year statistically. A lot of people didn't notice how really good he was. If you're a fantasy football player, you notice his numbers and that's it. But they were kind of disguised for those that don't play it. This guy is a top 10 running back, if not a little bit better. I think James Cook is very special. He ran the ball tonight, but the Steelers stopped him. So that front seven did their job and did very well. So I'm not really complaining about the defense that much, because once again, I go back to the fact that I think it was incomplete, but there was nothing that I was looking at saying, oh no, they are in trouble, like I was with the offense. When I look, I have to discount the fourth quarter and all those rushing yards, but still the fact that they didn't let them get in the end zone gives me something to think about, that those 3s and 4s were balling too.
Yeah, I will go in and say a couple players I thought showed out and played well. I mentioned a couple already, but I thought Keanu Benton continues to look good. Remember, he left last game with that eye injury, but he seems to be back from that. That's a good sign. I thought Patrick Queen, this is our first time to see Patrick Queen in a
Yeah.
black and gold uniform, and I thought he looked really good in limited time. Landon Roberts is Landon Roberts. And I thought it was really interesting early in the game. You got to see Peyton Wilson next to Patrick Queen in certain settings. And that's a dynamic duo there. And they were running all over the field. It was really cool to see some of these pieces coming together. I think this defense, say what you want about the second half, fourth quarter numbers, I think they're going to be really good. I think this defense could be really good. And let's wrap it up in the secondary. Not a lot to discuss here, as again, the Buffalo Bills threw for 78 yards in the entire game. Both quarterbacks combined. Ben DiNucci had 20 yards.
They dropped back 21 times. They had 3,
Yeah.
Well, it might have even been more than that because there was a couple scrambles.
Mhm.
But in all, there was 21 passing plays, 3 sacks, 18 attempts compared to 34 rushing plays.
Right. So it's not one of those, because they threw for 106 yards. It's not one of those where you're like, okay, the secondary didn't do well. There really was not much to mention. Zach Davidson had 1 catch for 27 yards, and that was their longest play from scrimmage, or at least the longest throw. And he was their leading receiver of everyone. Quentin Morris, 2 catches for 20 yards. Rookie Keon Coleman, 1 catch for 12 yards. Is there anything that we can glean from the secondary in this game, Dave?
Not really. I mean, I'd like to say they did a nice job, but it's kind of an incomplete because I don't know that they were overly tested a bunch, but whatever they were, the little bit that they were given, I feel that they did fine on. That was the one long play on third down that set the first field goal, wasn't it? The 27-yarder, I do believe. And that was really the main play in the passing game. Other than that, it was just Buffalo wasn't really doing much of anything on offense in the first half, and in the second half, it was just run.
Brian, thoughts on the secondary? I know you brought up Joey Porter Jr. earlier.
Yeah, I just haven't. They're not throwing against him, so maybe that's a good thing. I know he's out there, but the thing is, you're not hearing good from him or bad because you can't when nothing's going near the guy. The one guy that I want to bring up that I really like, and I hope he gets an opportunity on this team because I just like the guts. I like who he is, and it's 6th rounder Ryan Watts. I think number 29's a guy that can make this team and do well. And I also like what I saw, even though it was against the run, but he was out there. He was being visible with no problems. This is Corey Trice. So you have some younger guys there, the late draft picks in the last 2 years that, I think you're going to get some good things on the back end of that secondary as well. So the future with some young, hungry, gritty players in that defensive backfield does look pretty good.
I mean, for me, I think back to my concerns over the slot corner position. Cam Sutton, he's going to be out for the first 8 weeks, regardless of your feelings on all that. They don't have an answer there. And Beanie Bishop, I believe, didn't play in this game.
No, he did not.
I was having to go to Dave's 90-man roster a bunch, the article on SteelCutNetwork.com to say, who the hell are these guys? And I just can't fathom for the life of me them going into the regular season with no one, like no proven slot cornerback. I just can't fathom that. I can't. So I wouldn't be shocked if we hear about a move made at some point this week, maybe. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's leave the defense. Let's go to special teams. The most notable, Cameron Johnston. He has a good day, averages well over 50 yards a kick. To give you the exact number, 56.8, 5 punts, 2 inside the 20. Thought he was done a tremendous job. Chris Boswell, 1 for 2, misses a 52-yarder, stoinks it off of the left upright. Dave, what do you think about the special teams?
Well, that kick, my goodness, if that was from 52, he would have been good from 67 because look how high up on the upright he hit that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how high you hit it, it's got to go through. So, I mean, I don't want to say this with anything with Boz. I mean, my goodness, it was his first kick of the preseason. It was a 52-yarder, and it was almost right there, but it was almost doesn't give you any points. But how was the field? Is that the reason Josh Allen and TJ Watt and some of those guys ended up not playing because there was a torrential downpour not long before the game started and they had to evacuate the stadium and all that good stuff? That could have played into it. And honestly, if they felt that the field conditions were less than ideal, I'm glad they kept those players out. And if that was the case, I'm surprised they even had Boz kicking tonight.
Sure.
So, but if they sent him out there and those are ones, anytime it's over 50, it's one that you think of. Yeah, they can make it, but it's a little bit more excusable. If he's going to miss a 50-yarder, I'd rather him do it in the preseason. Other than that, I thought the special teams was pretty good. But the one concern about the punting is the out kicking the coverage, because they were giving up decent chunk returns. His shorter punt was covered great. I think it might have even been Mark Robinson or someone that was down there for it, with a very, very limited return. But it was a punt that was maybe 15 or 20 yards less than his other ones. So that's one thing that they have to got to make sure they're getting a good hang time on that so they can cover them. But there was no question about the distance being good. But hey, when you're kicking the ball that far and you're kicking it down to the 5-yard line and they're getting, a 14-yard return, you're still starting inside the 20. So in all, I was happy with it. But the one thing I would like to see is the coverage to be able to get down there and cut down on those returns a little bit.
All right, Brian, what's your thoughts on special teams?
I had really no problem with the kicking game. That's the whole game. When you're talking about return defense, the whole thing has changed, but they didn't give anything up egregious, so I'm not really concerned about that. Cameron Johnston, oh my gosh, fantastic. He was booming the ball. I'm not concerned about this guy in cold weather. I think he was a top 10 punter last year. I think he's going to be just fine for this team. I never quite understood when Jeff would call him Bill Burr. I never would understand that. I watched The Last King of Staten Island with Pete Davidson yesterday, and he was in it. And the entire time, all I'm thinking about is Steelers punter in this situation. So it was really funny. I mean, spitting images. But this guy was the star of the game. He looked, the Steelers actually, and this guy's not a rookie, and we know that he's a 32-year-old punter. But the Steelers in their history, in 85 and 07, have two Joe Green great performance winners that were punters. And we had this recently as on the preview as a trivia question. It was Harry Newsome. It was Daniel Sepulveda. Right now, and this is a sad thing to say, Cameron Johnston was the MVP of the last two games, probably. So as the way he's been punting. So, if they can go ahead and wrap up that part of their game, that's at least a plus that you can look at. And now there's other positive things here. I thought that was fine. As far as Boz, I'm never concerned. Everything Dave said there was valid. I think the return game, someone's going to break one here. So I'm not really concerned about that either. Not really, not any really concern to talk about, just to really laud the punting.
Yeah.
I wanted to say one other thing. Calvin Austin back there catching punts. The first few, he kind of seemed to hesitate, especially the one where he really kind of danced around the area and then tried to find the spot. On the last one, it was more of a catch and go and get what you can get. And I thought it was his best return of them all, of the ones that he had. So sometimes you just got to, you might want to look and see where your lane is, but sometimes it's like, hey, catch the ball, get upfield fast, because you got that for you. And then maybe you're getting upfield and happen to be close to that lane that you can cut into it and then go.
Gosh, he's such a little guy. Every time he gets hit, it looks like he's in a train wreck. My gosh. I mean, it's crazy. But nonetheless, I thought the special teams, you guys hit the nail on the head. There's really not much I can add. The Steelers seem to finally have gotten a punter. I think that's exciting. So, okay, This has been a tough show considering it's 9-3. We do have some super chats to get through before we call it a show and do our final thoughts. J Rock gives us $5. Was asking if you felt Austin.
There you go. That was the thing I just said. Yeah.
Just a half second faster, we get another 10+ yards. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're working on that. And I'd like to see Scotty Miller get more opportunities back there because he looked more decisive in his one return than he had in this game. So we'll see. Dennis Pavlik gives us $2. He said, "Here's to you, Mr. Robinson. Nice game." That's right. Mark Robinson had a good game. I thought he represented himself well.
And it was so good to see him doing well in pass coverage on that interception. He was all over that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason I think the pass was a little high to try to get it there. And
yeah,
instead it was going to a wide open Miles Killebrew.
That's right. Yeah, Mitch does what Mitch does. Dennis Pavlik gives us another $2. Says that proves why punters are football players. Yeah, absolutely. Cameron Johnson can lay the boom too. He can hit. He hit in Houston. It was I forget the return guy, but still, he laid him out pretty good on the sideline. So, all right, Steelers lose 9-3. Dave, what's your final thoughts?
Final thoughts are remember, it is still the preseason. This is about learning stuff about your team. But my goodness, what we've learned, especially through two games, is this team struggles to finish things off and complete drives. So that's frustrating. I mean, we were all looking for the Steelers going 20 points or more this week, and wow, they're almost as far away from that as you could get. I mean, other than 0 or 2. So it's very concerning, but it's still the preseason. Do I feel really good about the Steelers right now like I did this time last year and the year before? No, I do not. I'm really concerned about several things. Now, did I still have some concerns last year as well? And was it the offensive line the last couple of years? Yes, it was. So I'm kind of frustrated that's still such a big thing that I'm worried about. But luckily, these games don't count in the standings yet. The Steelers have to get it going in the right direction. And sometimes when there's so much to go with a new offensive coordinator and new quarterbacks and things of that nature, it's just things can just be a little bit off and really take away from it. I do like how the Steelers had 2 nice, long, double-digit play drives in the second half under Justin Fields. But both times they failed on 4th down and came away with no points. So that's why you got to finish things off. So am I worried? Yes. Do I remember it's the preseason? Yes. Do I feel good about things like I did last year? I do not. But you know what? You still got one more game to hopefully feel better about it, and then 2 more weeks for them to continue to get better because it really counts come September.
All right, Brian, final thoughts.
All right, don't mistake this for over-optimism, but in 1975, 49 years ago, this team went 1-4 in the preseason, won the Super Bowl. Of course, they are not that team, but there's a lot of teams that have had losing preseasons and don't win, that win. And then you have teams that go 4-0, sometimes 5-0 in the preseason and fall flat because it's what preseason is. Now, this game should have been 9-9. If this was a regular season game, we're complaining about not going for those field goals. I would have complained if they didn't go for it on 4th down the 2 times that they did. They didn't make it because they didn't make it, but you would have loved to have seen them make it and extend that drive or get in the end zone. You would have felt a little bit better if they could have put a touchdown on the board. But the fact that they didn't go for those field goals shows that they're trying to work things out. Was this better than last week? Was it worse than last week? It was just week 2. I know a lot of fans feel that this team should be showing who they are, but they're still, I'm making excuses. They're still putting a plan together. Is the plan going to be good enough? Do they have the players to be good enough? At this point, I don't know. It was all around a losing effort. If they would have ended up winning that game, I don't know if I would have felt any better.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at this whole thing, you just hope that they have the guidance, they have the intestinal fortitude to go ahead and put it together to show more in Detroit next week.
This is going to be a regular week for the Steelers. I'm sure that they'll probably try to emulate a typical Sunday game, which is 1:00. That's exactly when they play this upcoming week. When they go to Detroit, Mike Tomlin's press conference will probably be on Tuesday, but we might not. It might be later in the week, but still the Steelers will probably run through a regular work week. We're going to have everything for you, getting you ready for this last preseason game, which now has a little bit of pressure involved with the way the Steelers have performed in weeks 1 and 2. So keep us on your dial, whether you're watching on YouTube, it's Steel Curtain Network on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to us on the audio side, follow, subscribe. It costs nothing so that you get all of our shows, our audio-only shows like Brian's Bad Language, Dave's Pittsburgh Standard Time, My Let's Ride podcast. Go check those out. And as always, SteelCurtainNetwork.com. We hope that we're one of your stops every single day for Steelers coverage, SteelCurtainNetwork.com. All right, gentlemen, it's been good. It's been fun. I can't say it's been real fun, but we'll see you next week after another Steelers postgame show. Take it easy.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.